If you want to do public comment, the forms are up there. Please submit them to Mr. Pohl. And, oh, sorry, to Gary, Mr. Vaughn, and then he'll give them to Mr. Pohl. That's a process. But once the meeting started, that's the end for submitting those. So if you want to do it, you have to submit it before the meeting. So please do that before the meeting.
Chairs. Mm-hmm. Oh, you want some help?
No, I was double checking.
You have 1 minute to submit any public comment forms. Okay, we will call this meeting to order. Would you please rise for the pledge of allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All board members are present. And as a reminder, I will let people, some of you are new to public comment. There are some guidelines We do prohibit public comments which are frivolous, repetitive, and harassing. Interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement when the statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. Request any individual to leave the meeting when that person behaves in a manner that is disruptive of the orderly conduct of this meeting, and call for a recess or an adjournment to another time when the lack of public decorum so interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting as to warrant such action. So if you are making comments, and Brian, I'm gonna ask you to, pardon? Oh, there is a timer, and everyone has 5 minutes. Thank you.
All right, we have 12 speakers this evening.
Vogel. Here. Bull.
Here.
Oxy Green.
Here.
Dove. Here. Sherman.
Here.
Goodman.
Here.
Boone. Present.
Okay, would you put our first speaker?
Yep, we have 12 this evening. The first is Miss Teresa Getchell.
And I will have a clock up here for you guys, not to be rude, it's just to help you. A lot of you probably haven't given a 5-minute speech since high school. So I apologize, it's a little annoying, but it just helps the process. As soon as you start talking,
My name is Teresa Getchell. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of Raider Pride. I've been a teacher here at PHS for over 22 years and a parent of 9 students who attended Portland Public Schools. That's right, I own 3 biological children plus 6 exchange students from all around the world who now consider themselves part of our family and part of the Raider family because of the way they were included here. I believe in Portland, in our school system, and the core values of this community, which our current school board and administration have adopted and have demonstrated day in and day out. Pride, prepared, respectful, in control, determined, and engaged. I thank you all for valuing that our students be prepared. In the global society we live in, people are not all the same. To prepare our students, they need to learn about, appreciate, and celebrate the differences among beliefs, values, and viewpoints. This teaches them empathy and compassion, builds trust among one another, and fosters peace in a turbulent world. For example, having our students read books that show students who may not look like them, relationships that may not be their preference, families that may not have traditional roles, prepares them for a world beyond Portland. When we prepare our students to be productive, peaceful, compassionate citizens, we prepare them for success. For the R in Pride, I thank you for valuing respect. Respect means acceptance, compassion, and empathy. That we accept each individual for who they are, even when they are different or we don't agree with them. Respect is a very important foundational factor in the development and maintenance of a healthy learning environment. Showing others that we respect who they are means we cannot insist that they be who we are or who we think they should be. Thank you for valuing respect. For the I in Pride, I am grateful that we are teaching our students to be in control. Students understand that they will not always have control of the situation, yet what they can control is their own response. I'm so grateful to our current administration and her ability to respond rather than react. She models and teaches that we need to pause and reflect, then respond in a meaningful way. I have seen her guide students in this. It does not mean that we get to control others. I asked my husband if he would consider running for school board. He said he didn't think so. I asked why, because I admire his leadership and how he runs a large company with so many offices in diverse areas. He said, I don't think I'd be qualified to make decisions like what books kids should be reading. So I asked him, well, what do you do when you have a decision to make that you don't feel qualified to make in your company? He said, I asked the best professionals around. So for books in the library, he deduced we should ask the experts on reading and children, the teachers, psychologists, guidance counselors in our community. I'm so grateful to our current administration and school board for understanding that in control means we do our jobs and monitor our own behavior rather than everyone else's. We are about teaching that our belief systems may be different, but we can exist without hate or judgment. For the D in Pride, you and our community have always valued determination. For students, determination is about pushing themselves to succeed. By teaching independence and allowing students to make their own decisions, they take ownership of their education. Thus, we teach our students to be determined and successful. For example, in high school, we have a student council. Students get to learn about the Constitution and take actions based on their goals. They plan major events like homecoming and prom. They have the entire student body vote fairly. It is beautiful to see how students themselves will coordinate an election, then respect the selection of representatives for each class, even if they did not vote for that person. Our student community prides itself on its collaborative spirit. We adults can be so determined and respectful all in one. Finally, there's the E for engaged. Students are engaged when they exert effort to do well in school. Engagement and being inclusive in the school means learning needs and differences. It also means racial, ethnic, gender, and spiritual elements. For our students to be successful, they must be engaged. For them to be engaged, they must feel included. I admire the focus of our school and community on including students of all races, genders, and spiritual affiliations. This is what citizenship is about. Our current school board has guided our students and district through so much in the past years, not the least of which was the suicide of my own son. I'm here today to say I've seen a lot, and I cannot stress the pride I have in this current school board administration and leadership in our PPS classrooms. I have seen students prepared for the worst as our district went through crisis training. I have seen students on both sides of the COVID mask mandate being taught respect for others and their viewpoints while maintaining safety and the best education we can provide in a global pandemic. I have seen students learning to be in control as they plan celebrations in the pandemic and memorials to their fellow students as soon as the world seemed safe again. I have seen students engaged in rigorous, meaningful classroom education in spite of it all, because of an administration, staff, and fellow students who are the Raider family, who exhibit such Raider pride, not in spite of our differences, because of them. Thank you.
Next up, Ms. Sarah Pohl.
You'll have to excuse me, Teresa got me a little bit verklempt. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sarah Pohl, and I'm here tonight as a parent of 4 Portland Public School students and as an alumna of PPS. This last week, I have heard, as Atticus Finch would say, high talk on who has a right to be representative of PHS. And I also thought of Atticus in saying, before I can live with other folks, I have to live with myself. Some feel that an outdated popularity contest can only be participated in by a few who fit the proper mold. These voices ringing loudly that I have heard ring with hate, indignation, and a moral authority. Reflecting on the words I read this weekend, I am reminded of Holocaust survivor Kurt Messerschmidt, who said, "Some of the people disapproved, but their disapproval was only silence. And the silence is what did the damage." That is why I have great pride in seeing the community members willing to speak up tonight. Hate cannot exist when good people do something, when they use their voices to expel the bullies, when they say no more leaving others out in the cold. According to the Trevor Project, having a very supportive community reduces attempts of suicide up to 13% in LGBTQ youth. The YRBS and CDC say having one supportive adult reduces percentages of suicide attempts by LGBTQ up to 40%. These numbers are important, not just for a football game, but for lives. The people standing up for all our students here are those accepting adults, those supporting communities. Be proud. Proud of our school board, our administration, our staff, our community, who strive to support all our students. As MLK says, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Keep being the light. Keep being the voice to break the silence. Stop the damage. Keep doing what you do, because we're all very proud.
Ms. Rachel Gibbon.
Hi, I'm Rachel Goodman. I've been an educator in a neighboring community for almost our schools. Ensuring equity and permitting a voice for all students is the foundation of public education. And for supporting that, I thank you. Thank you for continuing to model these values for our students. Little ed research. Diversity allows students to embrace the 21st century learning skills of communication and collaboration, among many others. As we prepare students for their post-secondary lives and careers, these skills will be invaluable assets. They will also help our students develop global competencies, which prepare them to be competitive in a global job market. I've witnessed a myriad of beautiful learning experiences while in all of the diverse groups that I've worked in and taught in. Because of these experiences, I highly value that my children are led by administrators and a board of education who support not only the 21st century skills, but the civil rights of all individuals. Sarah stole my favorite Martin Luther King quote, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that." And these words resonate with me. Thank you to the administrators and the board who continue to drive out darkness and continue to be that light for my children. Thank you.
Miguel Hinman.
Hello everyone, hello parents, board members, school staff, and any other individuals that decided to come out tonight to discuss all that's been going on between our town lately. Before I begin, I wanted to make a sensitivity warning because this speech will include themes that some may find upsetting or triggering. Now to the matter at hand. I've lived in this town my whole life. It hasn't been the longest life ever, I understand that, but in my nearly 17 years of living in this town, I've seen it in some of its brightest times and some of its darkest. Just this past year, I've lost several friends in the worst fashion possible, which took one of the biggest tolls on this town I've ever seen anything do. We've survived through tornadoes, we've survived horrible storms, some come together to support the Black Lives Matter movement, some have now dedicated their lives to helping those who struggle mentally with getting by, some still choose to hate and judge and separate. I've seen this town be the most unified town ever when faced with tragedy, and I am seeing this town more divided than ever due to recent situations that are likely the reason you're here today. I believe these recent events that have happened show the truest colors of our town, and it displays just how divided of a town we have always been. Some choose love, some choose hate. Those who hate crave the power to win over the lovers, the dreamers, the hopeful folk. Those who chose love want to see change in this town and see genuine social progress because our town has been victim to discrimination and hatred towards those who deviate from society's norms. Almost every day at school, there are kids I overhear judging a kid who dressed up in an experimentally built outfit. I hear those kids spread hate because that's the way they were taught. I hear the kids who love spread the love and acceptance they were taught as well. These past events shouldn't be a main topic of discussion because all it does is prove who's a lover and who's a hater. The discussions we need to be having are much, much deeper than this. We need to take a step back and look at what our little society here in Portland considers to be social norms. We need the input of those who go against these social norms and their reasons for doing so, whether it be political, moral, or biological reasonings for their decisions to live differently from those considered normal. We need their input because for too long we have only ever given a loud voice to those who want to speak for those who go against these norms. It's time we get a voice for those who genuinely differ from society's norms and begin normalizing true acceptance, normalizing difference, and normalizing those who want to be lovers, dreamers, and all the supportive, caring people that know these dreamers. For years, those who want change have preached the word of the man who helped pave the way for all who are different from society's norms. He had a dream that we could all live together without fear of segregation. I believe that as a society, we need to carry on this dream and build onto it. Not only do we need to build or dream of a future fearless of segregation, we need to dream of a future where every last person, regardless of their unique features that make them who they are, to accept and to love each and every person instead of scold those who break the word of God. This school is a public school where we should be free to express ourselves as truly as we can. This isn't a school ran by God. It is ran by our principal, our dean of students, all the staff that make this building function is what it is ran by. We, the people of this town, need to dream big and accept the change my generation will bring as we grow older. I believe it is possible. I hope that you believe in this dream as well. Thank you.
Ms. Gwen Verlman.
Actually, we have a presentation, and might have the presentation first. I'm Kim Stevens, and the presentation is about, the attempt to expand Title IX.
Kim, I'm sorry, are you saying you're with Gwen?
Yeah, Gwen's
Okay,
supposed to
thank
come
you.
second, I think the paper got switched.
So it's quick.
But, is mine here?
Kim Stevens.
Yes.
There are two of them. Okay.
Okay. First of all, this is not about hate toward any people or people who make alternate gender choices. It's about taking away the rights of many to get special privileges for a few. I'd just like this to be noted in the minutes. So the presentation is one of the most egregious government actions yet. Today, I want to make you aware of the Biden administration's attempt to expand Title IX. This has been called one of the largest, most aggressive social engineering overreaches of the government in America's history. It's nothing less than a federally mandated indoctrination of our children. Bernadette Broyles of Child and Parental Rights Campaign says that this regulation will directly affect 77 million children, requiring the normalization and unquestioned acceptance of gender identity ideology as part of the school environment. The threat to parental rights, children's physical, mental, and spiritual well-being, religious liberties, freedom of speech, girls' safety and sports is more potentially devastating. What is Title IX? Title IX of the Education Amendments was enacted by Congress in 1972 to eliminate discrimination in education based upon sex, which is gender, against girls and women in particular. It states, no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. When Title IX was passed, girls and women faced high barriers to pursue educational opportunities, particularly in higher education. Title IX was designed to remove those barriers and now represents 50 years of progress in education made by girls and women. Title IX regulates every public K-12 school, college, university in the nation, as well as every private school that takes federal funding. As a result, it has wide-reaching implications for tens of millions of children and parents across the country. The regulations implemented in Title IX were binary, based on two genders, male and female, recognizing biological distinctions where they matter and prohibiting discrimination based on biological sex, gender, as Congress intended until now. The proposed changes. On July 12, 2022, the United States Department of Education published the Federal Register a notice of proposed rulemaking to rewrite the federal regulations governing Title IX. The proposed revised regulations would expand the scope of Title IX without congressional approval to include prohibiting discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. This effective rewrite of Title IX's fundamental purpose would have many devastating consequences for parental rights, free speech, free exercise of religion, girls' sports, and children's health and safety. Members of the public will have until, it's actually today, September 12, 2022, to submit comments to the US DOE outlining these harmful effects. I'll say more about that momentarily. They create a new category of sex discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. They declare that preventing a student from participating in any school activity consistent with their gender identity.
Kim, you have 1 minute.
Okay, subjects that child to harm. Failure to follow the new rules would risk loss of federal funding. So they make upholding biological reality a form of sex-based harassment and place place of sexual harassment, the new language is sex-based harassment. Action like using a child's given name and biologically accurate pronouns instead of preferred name and pronouns may be regarded as sex-based harassment. Okay, so my next, Gwen will read the rest of it.
Excuse me, could you identify yourself, please?
This is Gwen Broman. Create a head-on collision with parental rights. The new regulations require K-12 schools to affirm a child's asserted gender identity as a matter of federal law. This will involve school officials in life-altering decisions affecting the health and the well-being of children. They will further encourage school officials to usurp parental authority without notice to or the consent of, and even over the objection of, parents when it comes to gender identity. This will potentially drive a wedge between children and their parents at the time when children need their parents the most. The regulations also expand Title IX's reach to include what occurs outside of school. Because they deem failure to treat students consistent with their gender identity subjects a student to harm, activities will be able, or activists will be able to report to the State Child Protective Services parents who uphold biological reality and refuse to allow school officials to endorse their child's discord gender identity. Since this would be federal law, the obligation to comply with the proposed regulations is not, quote, alleviated by any state or local law or other requirement, end quote. Therefore, these regulations will create legal uncertainty about the enforceability of state laws protecting parental rights where they conflict with the new federal Title IX regulations. This will assuredly be exploited by activist officials and likely require expensive court action to obtain a resolution to the conflicts. Require schools to open up their privacy facilities based on gender identity. Schools would be required to permit biological males who identify as females to use private facilities set aside for females and vice versa. Girls and women will have to surrender their rights to privacy and be placed at increased risk for harassment or assault by males who claim a female identity, jeopardizing girls' and women's athletics and educational opportunities. These rules will require sex-separate sports to be based on gender identity instead of the biological gender. This will force girls and women to compete on an unfair basis for the athletic opportunities and scholarships against males and create significant risk of injury for girls and women. Ultimately, normalize gender ideology and harm children's health. These regulations will promote and normalize gender identity ideology in our schools as mandated policy and wrongfully encourage students to believe that, quote, children can be born into the wrong body. Many children will then pursue chemical and surgical alterations that can have irreversible, life-altering consequences for them, such as sterility and lifelong sexual dysfunction, interrupting healthy growth and development, loss of bone density, cognitive problems, blood clots, cardiovascular disease, and cancer. Disproportionately harm minority and other disadvantaged children. While the proposed regulations would ensure all children in a harmful ideology would then disproportionately harm minority and other disadvantaged children to remain trapped in a public school, unable to flee the system. In May of 2022, the U.S. Department of Agriculture announced that in order for schools to receive funds for free student lunches, breakfasts, and other food items, they must comply with its interpretation of Title IX and other food-related programs. To receive food assistance under the new rule, the Biden administration is forcing schools to comply with allowing boys to use girls' changing in restroom facilities and forcing teachers to use inaccurate pronouns for children who believe they are transgender.
1 minute.
The National School Lunch Program feeds nearly 30 million children every day. None of these potential harms are contemplated by Congress when they enacted Title IX in 1972. Parents, faith, and community leaders and educators must speak out courageously and clearly about the many destructive consequences that these regulations will have if implemented. We only have until tonight at midnight to do so. Thank you.
Miss Mary Arlen.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me say some words. I am a parent of 2 students in the Portland school systems. I would like to thank the school board and administration for their actions during the height of COVID-19. Trying to stop this infection from spreading was a challenge with an ever-shifting task. I work in an environment caring for the vulnerable and susceptible population that experienced more symptoms that were severe and even death as a result of COVID infections. The stress of trying to minimize exposure to them and my community was alleviated as the school administration had good communication individually with me, as well as good practices to help me feel like my family and my occupation was a safe place and minimizing the spread of this infection. I truly appreciate that. I would also like to applaud the efforts of this board and administration and staff to promote a culture of embracing diversity and not excluding people regardless of their race, gender, age, or social status. As with any school and community, there's unfortunately instances of discrimination and hate. I personally heard of the fears of students going to this school and hesitating to participate in a dance or social event with the consequences of negative statements or negative actions because of their gender or from other students. I understand there's a process of reporting and resources to these students that I've been able to direct students to that experience this sort of negativity. But as with anything, it can be hard to do this as a student. Some of this negativity is also coming from our community's social media pages that needs to stop as well. I'd like to voice my disapproval of such negative posts towards students that are here that are LGBTQIA+. So our job is not done yet, but I'm willing to continue to be that positive change, along with the work that I see this school board, administration, and staff do. So thank you for continuing to take on this difficult task of inclusion of all people. Thank you.
Rihanna, and I apologize, Wiegand?
I'm Rihanna Wiegand, and I went to Portland. I will start by saying that the information is out there, and it has been for some time, just basic biology. So opposing this homecoming queen, we have people that made a choice, the choice to learn or hate. Parents that are operating at such hatred and stupidity shouldn't even be allowed on Portland property. My son goes here and he deserves the same acceptance as every other student. I admire the strength of this girl and her family during this time.
Miss Valerie Fox.
Hello. I don't have a fancy paragraph or anything written up. I've just come here to share my heart because that's what I was led to do tonight.
Yes, could you use the mic, please? Thank you.
With the challenges that our community has faced with this past year, it's been very heavy on my heart for our children, and to be there for them and show them how to handle these different situations and lift them up. I want to thank the board here. My 2 middle children, I have 4 children total that have gone through. I have a 4-year-old coming up. But my middle 2 children lost their father to colon cancer 2 years ago, and I just want to thank you guys for being supportive and being available for them as they were going through their grief. That was a very difficult time for us, and I wanted to thank you for that. But also, I had asked the school board if I could bring a prayer group through all our schools this summer before school started. And I did get approval to do that. So I was able to lead a prayer group through this school, the middle school, and our elementary schools. I believe in the power of prayer, and I believe that our schools are founded on the voice of Christ. I believe that does stand to be who we are. I was brought out to Portland almost 20 years ago from Lansing. I was a young dropout single mom. So I have been just fallen in love with this community for the last 20 years. And I think it's an important time now to uplift the families and the children that are going through all these difficult times, darkness and confusion, and I stand on the truth. This has gotten me through a lot of difficult times, and I believe that everybody in here has some heart in that. And I wanted to speak tonight and just be a light in the darkness. And for all those that don't know and don't understand a lot of this different stuff, I would love to sit down and talk to you about some of these different challenges that we're facing, and our children that are confused right now and don't necessarily know who they are or what they're doing. Instead of judging, we need to uplift these families and these children and show them that there's a voice in the darkness to help lead them and guide them. And we need to get rid of the hate and the judgment and the things that aren't fruitful. And the things that are fruitful are everything that the Lord God Almighty stands for, and that is love and peace and joy, and not hatred, not cursing and judgments and breaking each other down. It's uplifting each other, even when we don't understand, to come together and try to understand, to listen to one another, and find out what's really going on. Thank you.
Ms. Rachel Gross.
To the board, thank you for your time and for the hard work that you put in. Thank you for being inclusive, keeping all of our students in mind, and striving to make the best learning environment possible. I'd like to touch quick on what a school board role is. One of the roles is to create and adhere to policies that will keep students in an equitable position when it comes to academics, the social learning community, and to prepare students for being members of a greater and even more diverse world beyond Portland. In other words, board members are stewards of education for all. Our student body is made of many students and exchange students with various backgrounds and belief systems. Having a diverse student body is beneficial for all of our students. This is how they can learn different perspectives and how we learn to work with and collaborate with others who may be different than us. I am proud that our students have embraced that diversity when it comes to this year's homecoming court. They have chosen to celebrate and honor that diversity. Not only this year, but also in previous years, they have shown that they want to include more than just the traditional students that we think of on a homecoming court. In the past, they have included exchange students and students with special needs. It's just not about who's popular, but who they think represents them and the kindness in their hearts. They have chose to say, we see you, we honor who you are, and we want all to feel included. I mentioned tradition. Tradition can be a good thing, but, is it still on? Okay, sorry. Tradition can also be a hindrance to change. This situation reminds me of 50 years ago when tradition was people of color were not allowed to attend schools with whites. I'm sure it was hard for people to accept a person of color going to school on a homecoming court with their white kids, which sounds absolutely ridiculous today. Fortunately, change happened, and we fought against that discrimination. We are now facing discrimination of a different kind in today's world. We need to continue that fight today. Our Portland Public School kids have embraced acceptance and challenged the social norm. They have chosen to be the example of what acceptance for all means. We think of homecoming as a fun event, something for the kids to do for fun and take a break from their studies. But I think in this year's homecoming court, we have found it to also be a great learning opportunity. Much like sports, there's always more to something that meets the eye. And I am so proud that the kids have led the way for choosing to fight discrimination and really what it means to accept all people. I hope the adults of this community follow their lead and support them in their choice.
Mr. John Bonner.
Good evening. It really kind of saddens me that we use the word diversity in the workplace, in the schools, and everywhere. Where I came from, diverse, I never planted corn, soybeans, and wheat in my hayfield. They were all divided, but we used them all. We didn't think nothing less of either grain. In the workplace, we don't put swing sets, kayaks, and sleds, T-bone steaks and bread on the same shelf. They're all divided, but we're diverse in the products that we sell. So when we use the word diverse in humans, are we trying to divide the humans by labeling them as a specific race, a gender, or what their sexual desires are? Because that's not right either. Where I came from, we treated everybody with dignity and respect. That's all people, not just some people, and we don't play the victim card. Everybody's not a victim, and we use the word hate because we don't agree with someone, that we use the word hate. Something that we should look forward to is being honest with everybody. If we're honest with ourselves, then we can be honest with everybody. And if you could show a little bit of dignity in everybody, when you use the word judge, you're not judging the person, you're judging a person's actions. If we want to say that kids can make a decision to be whoever they want to be, can we make that decision that children can say, well, I'm not going to school anymore, or I'm going to buy me a gun, or I'm going to go down to the liquor store. So what decisions are we going to allow children to make? That's what we as parents did. I've raised 3 kids of my own, adopted 1, we took in 6 others, and had 2 foreign exchange students. We took in kids from different states every year and put them through the 4-H program. That was all cool. But to tell them that they could make their own decisions and do whatever they wanted, I never let them drive the car when they were 6, 7 years old. So it really saddens me that we use these words, diverse, because diversity really has nothing to do with human beings. We're all just people. We have different desires, we come from different cultures, and we need to be honest with ourselves. And if you treat everybody with dignity and respect, and if you're compassionate at all, that means you're honest. And if someone is living in an immoral lifestyle or whatever, you let them know that, that doesn't mean you don't like them. That means you're their friend because you're being honest with them. And if you can't be their friend and be honest with them, to agree and say, oh yeah, we just accept that, that's not being honest, and that's not being a friend. So, to be compassionate, take someone under your wing, help them along your way, help them with their struggles, and be a real friend to them. It's not really that difficult. But to agree with everything just because doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And it really saddens me that we do that. When we go out and you say you judge someone, You're not. You're judging their actions. You don't want, it, for instance, let's teach honesty in school. If a person identifies as something that they're not really, that's not being honest. And if we accept that, then we're teaching them not to be honest. Does that make sense to anybody here?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, why would you say something that you're not? Is everything okay, whether it's true or not? Just be okay to say it? We all gotta go with it?
Less than a minute.
That's the only thing, just, if we all just try to be honest with ourselves, then and only then we can be honest with others. Let's just put some food for thought. It's okay to be who you are, and it's okay to be a friend to everybody. But everything is not okay. Would it be okay for someone to steal your car? Because if it goes on decisions on what people get to decide, then who's to say what's right or wrong? Thank you.
Our last speaker, Alex Shelby Hessel.
Hello, my name is Alex Hessen. I have a young daughter here at Portland, and I don't think the school should be getting involved in parental decisions on gender or anything like that. It needs to be something that is small. We come to school, learn math, reading, science, but when my daughter comes to me and is asking me things about things an adult should be considering and talking to, that's not right. She shouldn't have to be worried about, well, my boy, because she knows she's a girl. So I don't think the school should be getting involved in things. The parents should be having those discussions with their kids at home. There's a boy, there's a bathroom, there's a real bathroom. On the Title IX issue, I was a wrestler, wrestled collegiately. A lot of great women, athletes that I trained with, like volleyball, tennis. We're setting women back a long ways by changing these Title IX laws. Men, we all know men are biologically a little stronger, faster, especially when you get to the higher athletics, collegiately, professionals. You can look it up. I don't know one Olympic sprinter, women's sprinter that has ever beaten the men's Olympic sprinter as far as their personal best time. So it's sad for my daughter that she's gonna have to grow up not competing at a level that she should be competing at, but have to be pushed aside for boys to compete against her. And I don't think the school should be involved in this at all.
Thank you for all of those who spoke tonight, and we will now continue with the rest of our agenda. Okay, consent items. I will entertain a motion that the board approve the consent items, which include the approval of the minutes of the Board of Education, August 8th, 9th, and 22nd. Ooh, busy day. 22nd. Payment of bills for July and August of 2022, and approval of the agenda for this meeting.
Support.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Action items. A ratification of the 2022-2023 district calendar. This has been in the making a couple times.
For a little while now, so the board, you have a link to those calendars as well as the calendar numbers to show that. 108 days, 1,090 hours. So the approval of this, will, I will have it posted tomorrow for parents and staff, so they can see the full year.
Any questions by board members? Okay, then I will entertain a motion that the board ratify the tentative agreement for the 2022-2023 calendar as presented, a copy of which support?
I'll support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Letter B, approval of salvage list dated September 12th.
So there's quite a bit on here.
Wow.
Now, as we continue, we struggle with storage across the district, and we need to make room for other stuff that needs to be stored, so you can see that there's a lengthy list, across the board. There is, new weight room equipment should be installed on the 22nd, so we'll be moving all that equipment over to the salt storage building for the auction that'll be there. It's an online auction for Ranger bids, so that was marked salvage before, but we have a couple items, here or there to that auction. That should be happening today, that are on this list. Otherwise, it's just kind of clean up, as always. Put it on a salvage list, because it's either gonna end up going to a different district, sold at auction, or, donated, or ends up in trash. So it's one of those recycling. So we always use the rule that if it put it in a dumpster, someone might grab it out of the dumpster, we better mark it salvage, so people know that we're just not throwing random things away. That's right.
Your date for this, auctions?
It's, let's see, Monday's the 19th, it's the 20th.
Starting on the 20th?
It's Tuesday. Whatever that day is. 20th.
20th, and runs how long?
It's that day.
Or just that day?
It's up right now.
Any other questions of the salvage list? Then I will entertain a motion that the board approve the salvage list dated September 22nd, 2022, as presented, a copy of which is included as reference. And I'll support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, informational items.
Board, I provided you, two links, one is to the 2022-23 course catalog, also a link to the high school course registration handbook. The handbook kind of goes with the course catalog, so I think you should probably see both of those. The board will need to approve that at the September 26th board meeting, and it needs to be approved before count day, which is in October. So we'll get that done on the 26th. The course catalog has to cover all courses that we offer to students. Those are there, I want to give it to you now, so that you have to take a look at it. As always, the sooner you give me your questions, the better it is of the answer. So if you could get me any questions that you might have, then I can get it out. The course catalog is up and live, it's the one we're using right now, but there's a lot of changes at the beginning of the year, and kind of flexing with students moving out of classes and such. That also includes all the virtual classes that we offer.
I appreciate the extra time. Thank you. Questions on that? Okay, enrollment.
So enrollment, fluctuates, at the beginning of the year. I have my admin team or my buildings keep track of like Wednesday counts until we get to Wednesday count. It appears, I'm not gonna share any specific numbers, but, we budgeted 25 now, 25 kids down. We budgeted 25 kids down. I don't think we'll be that far down. So I think we'll probably be about somewhere between 5 and 10 kids better than that. So we'll be about 15 kids down in the class. That's just a trend. Talking to other districts, it's a trend all the way around. We've seen a slight decline in enrollment. Nothing to be super alarmed by, but having 10 kids better than what we budgeted.
Off the top of your head, and I apologize.
We have, sorry, Becky, I'm looking at you, so.
Wait, I didn't hear, I'm sorry.
Kindergarten, you have 142 in kindergarten right now? And then developmental kindergarten, we have
81.
So those are big classes, and they're right on that edge of adding a new teacher. So 142 in this year's kindergarten. That'll be the class of, it's like a long time.
Okay, continuity learning plan.
So I, had a meeting on this today. It was carryover from previous legislation with the federal government
So if you just wanna go around the room and just divide it.
I have cards, so you can just
We
grab
have
the
cards
cards
up
here.
here, so you can have something to write on, so
Let's just go by alphabet.
they're not in alphabetical order. So you just can,
Do you want me just to split the list up on the computer and send it?
yeah. That will split up the list, and she'll get them to you, okay? That works for you?
That works.
And I would say that the sooner that we can, I think there's 37. The sooner we get those cards out, at least we're close to the beginning of the year. I know you've had about 2 weeks already in or more. So we're just happy that they're here and filling these slots that we have. Anything else for the good of the whole?
That was all, that you did this before.
Want me to write?
Sure.
And
I'm
that's-
with you tonight.
That's, I'm gonna be voting all of them. I choose to do that.
So don't put you on
I
that.
don't
Okay.
put it on the list, I choose to do that. Anything else for the good of the whole?
And I appreciate you doing this, it's a nice recognition of that. Thank you for your time. And then just drop the card off.
And now I put names and faces for all those people. I'm really happy.
Color-coded shirts.
Then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.